Hi, Shell.
Hey, Rabbi,
I didn't
we are
realize you'd be. I
we
didn't.
got we got back last night.
Oh, I didn't realize you were going to be back for Shabbat.
Yeah, no, I am. I'm the gabbai. Thank God.
Oh, okay. Well, it's good
Yeah,
to see you. How was it?
it was excellent, excellent. I mean, we were supposed to go to the Amazon,
Right, right, right.
yeah, but they rerouted us only to Caribbean islands, and including Puerto Rico, we went to 10 islands.
Wow.
So in the West Indies. So it was all where did we go? Barbados, Antigua, uh, um, uh, St. Martin, St. Lucia, British Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands. Um, so many, I can't, off the top of my hand.
Well, that's all right. It sounds like
It was every day was a different port, and we had only one sea day. And Nancy and I personally, when we cruise, like to have multiple sea days. It's just relaxing
yeah.
because you don't have to get like on these. We every time we reached a port, we had shore excursions that you
Hmm.
get on a bus and you get taken around the island, which is beautiful, very nice, but it's a very active type of thing
Yeah.
to as far as relaxing and just reading a book and stuff like that. So it was nice. Weather was always was good. It rained periodically. Got some really cool pictures of rainbows and stuff like that.
Cool. I love
So
seeing the synagogue because
yeah,
I've heard about it for so long from so many people who traveled there. It was cool.
right, right. It was built in 18.
Hi, Ricky. Hi, Carol. Hi, Maddie.
Hi guys.
Hi.
So, I'm going to start sharing the screen. And I will also make it large enough for everyone to see, or hopefully.
Ladies, you're muted.
Yeah, and for this, everybody, can be it's open mic.
I know
Rabbi,
where you are.
Rabbi,
Yes.
how is Charlotte? We heard that she fell.
Yeah, she's fine. She's home. And Allison is helping her and she's getting some home health aids to help her move around. I mean, she can move. It just hurts. She had fallen and she had a collapsed lung, but they
Oh,
Ooh,
inflated it. They'd already inflated it by when I saw her in the hospital last week. She really didn't want anyone to know because she was okay. And the problem is there are a couple of broken ribs, and
oh.
that's
That's
just
painful.
yeah, that's just painful. And there's nothing you can do about it. That's part of the problem. So.
Hmm.
But she's home already, so that's good. And she sounded stronger. I mean, again, I saw her in the hospital last week, but then I saw her. I mean, I spoke to her yesterday, and she sounded pretty good. I think she's, knowing Charlotte, she's probably considerably more frustrated by not being able to do things because she doesn't like to sit still.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
Yeah,
probably hurts to take a deep breath.
yeah. Well,
it
I
does.
told her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I told her that she can actually tell everyone it only hurts when I breathe.
And
So
you shouldn't make
that's
her laugh either.
yeah, right, right. That's not a good thing either. But I don't know. It's just the winter is starting off rough. Joel Schwartzman was in the hospital. He
Hi.
had COVID, and so did Randy. So does Randy. So he's being moved to a rehab, but it's a rehab they're not crazy about. So I mean, it's just, I
Mm.
mean, on one hand, COVID is the worst thing anyone should have, but as you're older, it's still not good to begin with.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who you are. And then certainly, the older we get, not any respiratory thing is not good. Um, and he was having a lot of difficulty moving to begin with, so it's just, just starts building. But Randy said she is feeling better, which is good. So so. Boker
What
Tova at
other
this
good
point.
news do you have for us?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, not a lot of good news today.
Yeah.
I wish I could say. But in the meantime, it's Oraim Tovim. It's already afternoon. And we'll take a look at this week's Torah portion, Vayigash, which of course we were kind of left hanging a bit, as we are a lot during the Jacob Joseph narratives, with Joseph declaring that Binyamin, having set him up by putting the Geviyah, the cup, in his bag, and that he was going to force him to stay, and the brothers would have to go back and tell their father. And Judah comes forward, and that's the beginning of this parasha, where Judah comes forward and offers this deeply heartfelt plea to save his brother Binyamin. And of course, we know that it just is too much for Joseph. He can't hide himself anymore, and he reveals himself. Luckily he didn't kill his brothers with shock on that one, because they certainly, they, in the text, they can't even, they don't believe it. And of course we have a reconciliation and a reunion of the whole family, as they also end up bringing Yaakov to Mitzrayim, and they're settled in Mitzrayim, in the best part of the land. So what I'd like to take a look at this week are a couple of things. First of all, what is not necessarily a big deal in the text, but it seems that our commentators are sensitive to an ambiguity. And it shows a little bit of the narrative art of the Bible. So we find ourselves in the midst of Judah's speech to Yosef. And who would like to read?
I'll read.
Thank you, Maddie.
Good. You might be reading the whole thing, Maddie. Yeah. Okay.
No glasses, huh?
Well, it's a
small
very small
telephone
screen.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. My Lord asked his servants, saying, do you have a father or another brother? And we said to my Lord, we have an old father and a young child of his old age, whose brother is dead, so that he alone is left of his mother, and his father loves him.
Okay, so first of all, tearing at the heartstrings, go on.
And you said to your servants, bring him down to me. I wish to set my eyes upon him. But we said to my Lord, the lad cannot leave his father. Were he to leave his father, he would die.
Okay. So what is Judah telling Yosef? That why can't, he initially said, listen, we can't bring him. And what is the reason that they can't bring Binyamin down to Egypt?
Because his father would be so upset it could kill him.
Right. Now, were he to leave his father, he would die. That's the Hebrew. V'azav aviv v'amet. The question is it necessarily Yaakov who would die?
That's true.
Yeah. Now, this is not necessarily a major issue in the Tanakh. However, it points to kind of the emotions of the story. So let's take a look at how a couple of the Mefarshim explain it. Okay, first of all, Rashi.
And you said to your servants, bring him down to me.
No,
I wish-
Rashi
Whoops.
here. Yeah.
Whoops. Where?
Were he?
Okay. Were he to leave his father, he would die. If he leaves his father, we are afraid that he, Binyamin, might die on the journey, since his mother died during a journey.
Okay, so the concern here is not that Yaakov would die, but that
Binyamin.
right. By the way, the Benjamin in parentheses is not in the Hebrew. But since his mother died in a journey, and we know Meta alai Rachel, Rachel died to me. We know she died on the way to Ephrat. So suddenly we read this a little bit differently. Judah's telling him, we're worried. His father's worried that something would happen to him on the way. Would happen to Binyamin. Okay, and then we have Ramban, who is not mystical here. He's just, trying to give kind of a shot answer. Go ahead.
Were he to leave his father, he would die. Rather, the meaning is the lad cannot leave his father on account of his youth and his being the darling son in the lap of his father who loves him. And if he should leave him and come on the journey, the lad would die.
Okay, so again, they're concerned that who would die?
Benjamin.
Benjamin.
Yeah, but he can't be that young. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
because
that's
31 years old and he has 10 children. That's the big joke of all this.
yeah.
The
I mean,
moment
that's
he's 31 years old and he has 10 children.
yeah. So that is about to say that that is indeed one of the problems with Ramban's explanation is that how old is he really? Now, I think we have to realize that the Bible is not always clear on chronology, even though it's already explained that how old he is, and but like how old was Yitzchak at the time of the Akedah, and the Midrash can say he was really young, and then say he was much older and knew exactly what was going on. So, but the point is that here both Rashi and Ramban seem to think that it's Binyamin who is the one who could die, which is probably not how we normally read this text. I mean, that's not how I normally read it. So, or that was my initial, and in fact, not everyone agrees with Rashi and Rashbam, with Rashi and Ramban, and in fact, Rashi's grandson, Rashbam, says, go ahead.
Were he to leave his father, he would die. His father would die.
Yeah,
Will
so
die.
Rashbam is clear, it's like, this will kill his father. Now, on one hand, that's just simply an explanation of the text. On the other hand, what's going on behind this text? What are the emotions that are being involved that the brothers themselves may not even know? I mean,
wait, say that again.
All right, so we have kind of an omniscient view of what's happening. But why is there something, so one, we can understand why the father would be concerned that his son will die. That the connection between father and son, as we'll see, is very close. But the concern that the father will die within the emotional view of the story, again, as omniscient readers, because we know who all the characters are. Why is this so powerful that when Judah says, Vazavet aviv vamet, he will leave his father and he will die, i.e. the father will die? Why is that so powerful?
Well, Yosef hasn't seen his family for how many years?
Quite a few.
And maybe the thought that, he would never get to see his father again.
Yeah, so, the brothers don't yet know this. They don't yet know who Yosef is. But as readers, we do. And we can feel the power of this line, Vazavet aviv vamet, i.e. his father will die. Now, by the way, it's not totally unclear that they wouldn't suspect that Yosef would have compassion for the father. One, because Yosef has children himself, although they may or may not know that. But he does ask them, is your father still alive? Od avichem chai. So clearly there may be some compassion in there. But the brothers may not even know the power of what they are saying. Judah may not totally realize the power of what he's saying, but we do, knowing the whole emotional, the whole situation. Like even when we get back in the Akedah, when Yitzchak asked the innocent question, here is the knife and the firestone, but where's the lamb for the offering? Ooh, what a sentence. Okay, go on. And Rabbeinu Bachya is also fairly he's going to try and hedge his bets on interpreting this.
Were he to leave his father, he
Unborn.
would die. The lad will die. when he is on the road, since he is delicate and soft and inexperienced in travel by foot. It also includes that his father will also die due to sorrow over his son.
So, he's trying to cover all his bases,
Mhm.
and again, he's
It's
making
not
the
that
assumption
far-fetched, though,
here.
because if Benjamin dies on the road, his father probably would. I mean, in other words, it is covering all the bases, but it's not that far-fetched if you think about it a little bit.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I grant you that's probably his motivation in writing it. But if you reflect on it a little bit, let's say it wasn't Rabbi Bachai who was writing it. Let's say, for example, it was our Rabbi Ben Ezra who wrote this. Then you wouldn't think he's trying to cover all his bases. We're to some extent being influenced by the fact that we know who's writing this.
Yeah.
If you saw this written by a commentator who tends to be a bit more critical in general, then you would say, well, something that's probably true.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, he's not the only one who, but we take a look at Sforno. Who wants to continue?
I can
Who can see?
try.
Okay.
Where are we?
Right here. We're at the top
Okay,
of the
I
page.
see, I see, I see. I see, said the blind man.
Yeah,
Were he
that's
to
true.
leave his-
You're on an iPhone. I'm sorry.
Were he to leave his father, from the moment he will leave, he will pine for his father and become sick or die. Were he to leave his father, he would die. Because of this, his father will undoubtedly die.
So again, Sforno, who's a little bit more of a Pshat commentator, is trying to say that this, it could be, there's an ambiguity here, but it really could be either or both. It's not at all, the totally reasonable assumption. And then let's take a look at, well, even before we go into Tzror Hamor, this is not the most consequential ambiguity in the Bible necessarily. Not as much as like who sold Joseph into slavery. Was it the Midianites? Was it the Ishmaelites? And did the Midianites sell him to the Ishmaelites? There are other ambiguities that are. This is not so consequential, and yet when we read it again with our sense of what is going on in this story and the emotions of everyone involved, the ambiguity is powerful, and it can be read both ways or either way. And there's something powerful in it, because we know of the emotions that Yaakov has. I mean, he refused to be comforted after the loss of Yosef. And of course, he tells his sons before they go down, listen, Joseph is no more, and Shimon is in prison, and now you're going to take Binyamin. We can understand the father being so overcome with pain at the loss of his sons. And of course, the guilt of the brothers and Joseph himself. He's still thinking about his father, though, why couldn't have picked up quill and papyrus to write him a note? We don't know. But we talked about that last week. So it becomes as much, even though it's just one simple ambiguity, it's just made that much more powerful by knowing all the emotions that are involved and being brought out here. Now let's just take a look at what Tzror Hamor says. If you can see it, Ricky.
I can try. Judah made a long speech here with matters that are shocking. How did Joseph listen to this? He told everything that happened from the beginning to the end, and even things that ostensibly took place between them that were not told before. This was done very strategically by Judah, who wished to accomplish his goals.
Yeah, because as we look at all the things that he's saying, not all of these things were necessarily clear to everybody all along in the story. But Judah is bringing them all out, and I think Tzror Hamor is recognizing the power. And as we've talked about in the past, when we've looked at this parasha, and so many commentators have commented on, how powerful Judah's words words are.
Rabbi, you're freezing.
It's pretty cold outside.
You froze.
And of course,
Uh-oh,
you'll
there
say,
you are.
person listening, am I frozen?
Yeah.
No, you're back.
No, he was back, but he's frozen.
Oh, he's frozen again. We don't see the picture.
Wait a minute, you're all
Oh,
frozen.
we can see each other, but you're frozen. We can schmooze all we want here, but we can't. You're frozen.
Oh, he went out and he's going to come back in probably.
Yeah.
Let's hope so.
Hi there, you all just cut out.
We see you and hear
Still
you.
not coming in through clearly.
We hear you. I can hear
Okay, there we
you.
go.
We can see him. I hear him.
Oh, now I can
Yeah,
see
I can
him.
hear you. I can't see you.
You may want to, oh,
So,
okay.
more importantly, is can you see the text?
No, the
No.
text,
Oh,
It's still not a great.
No. No text, then you
They're
froze
telling me my
again.
internet connection is unstable.
Oh, it says you started screen sharing, but
But
it's not there yet. It's buffering,
Well,
buffering.
it's thinking.
All right, sorry, I'm just doing
We need,
trying something here.
there you go.
It's back.
Right. All right, you're slowly coming back.
My suggestion, Rabbi, if you could hear me, is to turn off your video, stop your video, and at least we'll be able
Hear
to.
you.
It'll-
Then we'd
Wait a
hear.
minute, I
Oh,
can turn off
let's-
my video, but then if I turn off the video, you won't be able to see the screen.
Oh, that's a
Oh.
problem.
Oh, no, we still see it. We still
We see the
it.
screen.
Yeah.
yay!
Can you hear me?
Oh.
We don't hear you.
Okay.
Oh, now I hear you.
Yeah, we hear you. No,
But you're still.
It's interesting today when you say we hear you.
You're all still
You
frozen.
understand what you're
I don't know
saying
what the problem
now.
with the internet.
Mm.
Well, we could talk about Yehuda's speech in the meantime. It's the longest speech in Sefer Bereshit. Far and away, nothing even comes close. About 16 verses. Okay, so it's a good point that Saramar is taking.
Sorry, you're.
No, we're just talking among ourselves, Rabbi Papi, while you can concentrate on getting back on board. You're looking across the door. Okay, you got it all in front of you there. You're a lot better shape than we are, brother.
Okay. I think I'm back.
yeah, we hear you now. Very
Yeah.
well.
All right. All right, Ricky, go ahead. The person listening. Sorry.
The person listening would think this was simply a retelling of the past, but it isn't, for as he was speaking of the past, he was communicating to those standing there that everything Joseph had done was to trick them with his questions. Why was his issue with them, and what did he care whether they had a living father or another brother? In the sense, all of Judah's words were golden apples and silver showpieces.
Yeah. So, is that commenting on the rhetoric of
Judah.
Judah.
And the plot thickens.
Yeah, but that's exactly the opposite of what the verse actually means.
Right.
The verse means that you say in a few words something that really is said properly. Rashi quotes this verse back in chapter 3 of when he goes on the verse. In other words, the whole point being that the force of that verse is to say something elaborate in a very few words. So
Right.
it's not the right verse, but the idea is good.
Yeah.
Because it's noting how long the speech is and why would the speech go on. Given the fact that this is a book that does not present long speeches, you know, it is, and if at your invitation, I hope, Rabbi Puppy, let's discuss why the Sefer is pushing out such a big speech here, since Sarah is raising the issue.
Mhm.
I think part of it is we're finding out things from the speech that we did not know before.
Yes.
For example, now from the whole story, we did not know things along. Up to now, we found out, for example, we were told before that Yaakov screams at them for even mentioning to them, to Yosef, that he had a brother.
Right.
Remember Yosef, Yaakov
Right.
let him have it? Okay, but here it becomes apparent that the only reason they mention it is because Yosef specifically asked about
Ask
it.
them. Hmm.
Okay, so then, here tonight we're learning a big thing from this. In the Tanakh, if A gives you one version of the story and B gives you another version, then let's take a look and see if there's a C. If there is a C, I mean a letter C, then that basically is going to help us understand that, B is not necessarily distorting A. B is actually amplifying A.
What about X and Y?
No. Okay. You want to do it that way? I'll do it that way for you. If Z says something and then Y contradicts it, then comes along X.
Yeah.
Does that make you feel better?
Yeah.
And now just to, look at some contemporary commentaries. Go on, Ricky. This is Sarna.
His father would die. Actually, the subject of the Hebrew verb vamet is ambiguous. It may be either Benjamin or the father. In light of verse 31, the latter is the more likely.
We'll get to that in a moment. And here, Robert Alter.
He leaves it to Joseph to decide whether the old man would die if he was separated from Benjamin, or whether Benjamin could not arrive without the father, or whether both die. Dire possibilities might be probable.
Yeah, so Robert Alter is, following Sforno and above commentators. And then finally, this was just from a recent appearance on the Torah.com. And he's kind of getting into why this happens, why we have this in the text.
We as readers are left to consider multiple interpretations of Judah's speech, just as we are never told why Joseph accuses his brothers of spying and why he wants Benjamin brought to Egypt. The Torah does not clarify how Judah understands Joseph's behavior and what he is trying to communicate in his plea. The tension is one of the elements that makes the Joseph novella so engaging.
Yeah, I think this is true for, a lot of great literature or a lot of great art in general, but certainly in the Torah, there are ambiguities that draw us in. What I said is we're readers, we kind of understand, we know the whole story. So, the emotional tension that's there is, I think enhanced by these ambiguities. And as Yehudi correctly pointed out, this is also the way the Torah tells its story. Some details that we didn't have before are now coming out. And that will happen.
One more word here. Instead of saying just ambiguity, why don't we say intentional ambiguity?
Okay, I would go with that. Yeah, I would totally go with that. So, and now why we often interpret this as, they say this, it's so terrible, Jacob would die. I think we have enough evidence, in seeing that he refused to be comforted for his one son and his reluctance and absolute refusal to send his younger son. So, when Judah says, "V'azavat aviv v'met," understanding that to be Yaakov's the one who would die, that I think is also clear from the rest of the story. So let's read just a little bit more of the biblical text. Go ahead, Ricky. Now your servant, my father?
Closer.
Now your servant said to me, you yourselves know that my wife bore two to me. One went away from me. I said, for sure he is torn to pieces, and I have not seen him again thus far. Now should you take away this one as well from before my face, should harm befall him, you will bring down my gray hair in ill fortune to Sheol.
Yeah. So, here, in the words of Judah, Yaakov himself is saying, listen, this is going to kill me. I mean, it doesn't literally say it's going to kill him, but, it's, this will be the death of me kind of thing. Go ahead.
So now, when I come back to your servant, my father, and the lad is now with me, with whose life his own life is bound up.
Yes. And it's a great phrase here. V'nafsho kshura v'nafsho. Literally, his being is bound up in his being. So like, who is the his, in that phrase? It's obviously both of them, but the nafsho, kshura, v'nafsho, it's that phrase ties everything up together. Everything is kind of
There's
bound
only one
together.
other place in Tanakh where that expression is used, and that's with David and Jonathan.
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, I mean, even in Shir Hashirim, it's not used.
Right.
That's what you would expect it, and you actually don't see it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that to me,
Maybe
that
you
last,
might want to talk about the word kesher, though. In other words, that word has a lot of vibes in it. It just doesn't mean, it could mean, just think about it. It could mean conspiracy. It could mean roped in. It could mean a knot, I mean, in other words, that word itself, has reverberations all over the place.
I think just in this phrase, it's so perfect. V'nafsho kshura v'nafsho. It just the words are kind of I mean the pronouns are ambiguous, if you will. And it just captures, all the emotions that are caught up here, and the sense of the how connected the father and the son are, but not just Binyamin and Yaakov, but and Yaakov and Yosef to some extent too. And Yaakov with his father, sorry, Yosef with Yaakov. Despite all the questions, there's a lot of emotion here, and I think that the end just, kind of demonstrates the intentional ambiguity that we have throughout the story and the emotional tension. So, and it's important that there's so much more. Scholars, literary scholars, biblical scholars have jumped on the Yaakov Yosef narratives to demonstrate all kinds of elements of the literary qualities of the biblical text, or how the biblical text, or I should say the various reading strategies that we have, can be applied to the biblical text, and we can find meaning in these different ways of reading the text. So the literary aspects of this, they talk about it all the time as a novella here. That's it's really seen very much as a remarkable story. And again, as we mentioned many times before, Thomas Mann also thought that this was an excellent novel.
Rabbi, why is the word nefesh a female word? Is there any particular reason for it? I'm just wondering. Nefesh, and then it says kshura. So I guess nefesh is feminine.
I really haven't thought about it, Yehudi. Do you have any?
I haven't thought about it either. You have to realize, Cal, a good deal of the time, this is just something that came back from, remember, Hebrew is a language, it's the last of the list of these Northwest Semitic languages, all of which, were out there long before. So we inherited our female and male, nouns and primarily from earlier Semitic languages, and we just pretty much took up what they had. So I don't think it's something you really want to get into.
Yeah, and it's probably, and sometimes the words flip, by the way. It could be masculine in one situation and not in another,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
feminine in another. And to some extent, you probably could ask that of any language that has masculine and feminine. Why certain nouns are masculine and why certain nouns are feminine.
Obviously, you have
Um,
to go with the language families. In other words,
yeah,
it's sort of idle to go ask that about French if you don't see how it is in Latin and the language, other Romance languages. That's what all. That was my whole point.
No, I was just wondering if there's anything about the nefesh. I know it has nothing to do with what we're reading, but it just caught my eye.
yeah. Also, remember that nefesh in the Bible does not mean soul. That's
Okay.
later. That's later Hebrew. Nefesh mean. I mean, I translated it as being, or his own with his life. His own life is bound up. This comes from Everett Fox's translation, and I heard Professor Fox speaking, on his translations and saying, how the word nefesh to some extent is almost talking about the whole breathing apparatus.
Oh.
It's like a nefesh chaya is a living being. It's later on that nefesh is understood as soul, post-biblical.
But yeah, and in the Tanakh, the word can sometimes just mean neck, throat, and when you say in the Tanakh, "Bo my nefesh," all you mean is the water's up to my neck.
Yep.
I'm about to drown. So what Rabbi Papke could be taken even a bit more literally. In other words, that's how it first
Absolutely.
started, and then it developed into another word for life, not just human life. You could
Right.
Make nefesh behemoth yishamena. Nefesh takat nefesh, talking about, if you kill an animal, you have to pay damages. But here just simply means, life. It does not mean, and sometimes it means a body, but the word soul is an English word that in no way, it captures what the Tanakh means by nefesh and should be avoided. Okay, because it makes people think that there's a soul which is somehow differentiated from the body. None of this is Tanakh's approach.
Right.
Okay, so putting it out there is just leading to misunderstanding. What Yosef is saying is that these people are so attached to each other. If one dies, think of the image of Siamese twins. Think of the image of in a novel where somebody dies and all of a sudden another person who's closely related somehow knows that the other one died. That's the image you're getting here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we don't have to spend any more time on it.
Okay. Yeah. No. Not good question, but it's
Yeah.
important to understand how language changes and how we understand it. Now, I just want to conclude by taking a look briefly at one other element. At the end of the parasha, we have Yosef carrying out his plans and doing what he can to save Egypt and the Egyptians during the years of famine. And at a certain point, the people are paying for the stored food, and then the money runs out. So then what do? And so here's what the people say. Would somebody else like to continue?
Sure, I'll read that.
Okay, thanks, Shel.
Um,
These are the people speaking to Yosef.
starting with why
I
should
should.
right? Why should we die before your eyes? So our land, acquire us and our land in exchange for bread, and we and our land will become servants to Pharaoh. Give us seed for sowing, that we may live and not die, that the land may not become desolate.
Okay, obviously they are a very heartfelt plea that they be given some assistance so that they can survive, they and the land, and they're willing to be, it says, servants to Pharaoh, avadim. Anachnu v'admatenu avadim leFaro. We'll all become servants to Pharaoh. Okay, so it goes on. Go ahead.
So Yosef acquired all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, For each of the Egyptians sold his field, for the famine was strong upon them, and the land went over to Pharaoh. As for the people, he transferred them into the cities from one edge of Egypt's border to its other edge. Only the land of the priests he did not acquire, for the priests had a prescribed allocation from Pharaoh, and they ate from their allocation which Pharaoh had given them. Therefore, they did not sell their land.
Okay, that's a whole nother topic, but a little bit of a difference from biblical tradition where Dafka, the Kohanim and Leviim, do not have land. They are provided for by the community, by the what goes on in the Mishkan, or later on the Beit HaMikdash. So that's just an interesting thing. So, coming back to this, essentially, we have Yosef creating a system
Remember,
suggested by the people.
Rabbi Papi,
Yeah,
there might be something hidden here. After all, we know that Yosef is married to the daughter of one of the most important priests in Egypt.
right.
No,
It's not but
I mean, I'm saying
Tiferet Kohen
they
On.
haven't hidden that from us. They've told us that. Okay. So, if we think about that here, we might start thinking there's something more in this than what, after all, Yosef is going to be writing a whole chapter about nepotism pretty soon.
Right.
Now, so I mean, this will be mild compared to what he's doing with the rest of his family.
Yeah. That's I hadn't thought about that. But again, I didn't look into this question deeply. But let's see how our some of the
Today, half the time I think of things is because you elicited by saying something that never even crossed my mind before.
yeah, I mean that's what happens when I'm studying. It's like, oh my God, I wish I had time to look into that. It's just I got to stay on one topic. Today I realized I had enough material that we could just quickly take a look at a couple of things. The first one is not a major issue in the Tanakh, but just points out some of the literary qualities. Now we have another thing. So first of all, again, let's make it clear, what is Yosef's plan? What does he, I mean, again, even if it's initiated by the people, essentially, what does he create? What does it mean?
Everybody in Egypt is essentially living on land that doesn't belong to them. And at the very same time, he's giving his family lands that will not only belong to them, but belong to them in perpetuity. They're called the Akizah. So it's sort of hard for us to read to the end of Sefer Bereshit and not think Yosef is described as a very wise man. This doesn't look so wise to me. This looks to me like a really dumb move. He's favoring his family to the extent that basically he's bound to provoke jealousy on the part of the natives.
And also, they become, I mean, they suggested, but they become servants to Paro or Avadim.
The others, while he's basically putting his family in a situation of such favor that it's almost impossible to think that this is going to last very long or will last at all after he dies.
Yeah. So we'll see that Kushner in his commentary in the Eitz Chaim, makes some reference to this. But I mean, let's just take a look at how a couple of commentators, deal with Yosef's plan. And again, we may learn more about the commentators than about the text. So first of all, Meshech Chachma, Shel, would you continue, please? Acquire us.
Yes, acquire us and our land. But Joseph detested the ownership for slaves of slaves, sorry, of slaves, by which a person is master over another person to his detriment. And therefore it says, so Yosef acquired all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, but not of them as slaves. Only the land was taken for Pharaoh, but they were only taken temporarily to work for the living and to be day laborers in a field. Therefore Joseph said, whereas I have this day acquired you, meaning temporarily, and your land in perpetuity for Pharaoh. That is why he removed them to the towns so that they not possess their land. For how else would it be clear that he had acquired their land if they were not
Getting there.
sold and continued to occupy their land?
So, like Makashela Rashi, what's Rashi's problem? What is Meshech Chochmah struggling with here? Or what is he really trying to interpret or explain? Let's put it that way.
Well, it's clearly says at the end, "Oh, you knew about dealing with Paro." So,
Yeah.
but you do real. And now you bring up something which I'm sure you're aware of, Rabbi Papi, which is that the verse that in the Masorah reads, "Ve'ata'am ha'aviro tole arim," that Joseph proceeds to move the people out of the rural areas into the cities, is not read that way by the Septuagint. It's read "ha'avid otola avadim." Okay,
Oh,
so that basically it makes you wonder if the apologetic issue is long precedes Meshech Chochmah, because but it says later, "Well, you know avadim l'Pharaoh." So it's sort of hard to basically understand what we're talking about as urban renewal.
right. And also, again, it seems,
Even
slavery exists in the Bible, serfdom, and it obviously becomes much more problematic for later Jewish tradition than it did for biblical tradition. Although biblical tradition clearly is not happy about slavery or people who choose to be slaves. They become slaves because they have to economically. It's not necessarily the slavery that we will have later on in the United States or in other places. But still, there's a great discomfort with it. And, Meshech Chochmah is trying to be melamed zchut, trying to be very, very positive to defend Yosef. And, he's not really making them into slaves. He's really, what he's doing is the land belongs to Paro, but they aren't really slaves. So that's what he's trying to explain.
By the way, Rabbi Papi,
Yeah.
what I said before about the Septuagint is reinforced by the fact that the Shomroni reads it that way too. Now I'm actually reading the Shomroni. Ve'eta'am ha'avid otola avadim mitzay gavul Mitzrayim v'yad katzei. So there's no ands, ifs, or buts that there was a real strong Jewish position of what Yosef was doing, is enslaving the Egyptians while giving land to his brothers as an achuzah that they can then bequeath to their descendants in perpetuity. I mean, why would, to me, something, I think the main reason the Torah tells this whole story is precisely to show that, that's just not the way to behave with the Lot. Don't take advantage of any special privileges you get in order to basically favor yourselves and at the expense of others. Yosef might have been very wise when he was interpreting dreams at the age of 30, but now what he's doing is not so wise. He's a little bit older, and another reason why maybe we don't want very elderly people running. As an 85-year-old person, I can say it, running the whole country. Okay, in other words, Yosef sits in this office till he gets to be 110, or at least so the story tells us. Abarbanel, who's not exactly strange to royals, says this is the longest story he's ever heard about in all of the royal annals. In other words, Yosef might have been when he starts out. But at this point, he's doing something that isn't really all that wise, especially if we read the text the way the Shomroni and the Septuagint read it. But even the Tanakh says, so there's not too much question as to what's going on here.
Yeah. Now, Rashbam was really not one to mince words. He, picks up on this. Go ahead, Shel.
As did
Yeah, Ve'havir oto. Sorry, I forgot to put in the what the text says. Ve'havir oto la'arim, and he transferred them to the cities, or as Yehudi pointed out in some earlier in early translations, they read ve'havid. Not big, certainly a very possible reading. The difference between a resh and a dalet is not necessarily that great. So he enslaved them in the cities. Okay, and but this whole transfer of populations, uh, Rashbam sees as being similar to something else. Go ahead, sorry.
as did Sennacherib, as it is written, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of olive oil and of honey, that you may live, so that each one not claim a right of possession over his land after its sale.
Yeah, so basically he's transferring the population, and he makes a reference to Sanchariv. Sanchariv, of course, was the Syrian general who transferred the population of the north, or a good part of the population of the north, hence the idea of the 10 lost tribes, is that he would, this is not an uncommon practice, that they would uproot populations from their native land, move them to another land. And of course, that cut down on rebellion because, one, people were moved to a new land that they were not as familiar, they didn't have the connections, and they don't have an emotional attachment to it as they did to the land from which they came. So Rashbam is being very clear here that what Jacob is doing, I'm sorry, what Joseph is doing is not really so nice. Comparing him to Sanchariv, yeah, that's a pretty harsh judgment. And as I said, Kushner, in his commentary in the Eitz Chaim, when you read below the line, the Drash commentary, if you will, in the Eitz Chaim, a lot. I mean, it was mostly edited by Harold Kushner, alav shalom. And sometimes a lot of the commentary there is, not necessarily from a particular traditional source, but it's from Kushner. But be that as it may, I mean, he's really quite a sensitive guy. He was quite a sensitive guy. And here's his commentary. And Shall we can finish with this?
Sure. Rashbam criticizes Joseph as ruthless compared to his dispossession of the people of their lands, to the actions of Sennacherib, the infamous Assyrian king. Kushner continues commenting on verse 25, we shall be serfs to Pharaoh. A generation,
avadim, it's the same word as slaves. Serfs is a nice word.
a generation later, the Egyptians would take their revenge on Joseph for having reduced them to slavery by enslaving his people.
Yeah. I don't know if it's pshat, but we do know that midah keneged midah, measure for measure, is very much part of the biblical mindset. And I'm forgetting who it was, but one commentator talks about how the harsh treatment of Hagar by Sarah
That's right,
is,
exactly. It's Radak and then Ramban. But we
yeah,
know that when we were younger, Radak hadn't been published at that point today, published for the general public anyway. And so the result of that was that, but something, Rabbi Papki, as we reflect now, in chapter 15, Hashem announces to Abraham, this is what we read in the Haggadah every year.
right.
One day, your children and your seed and you are going to become slaves in Egypt. And then something, and now that I reflect at it, from that point on, we're getting reason after reason as to why that's going to happen. In chapter 16, Sarah goes ahead, Vata'aneha Sarai Vatabrachmi Panela. That's the Ayin Nun.
Presses Hagar, and she
Yeah,
has
Hagar.
to flee.
And then in chapter 21, we got the same. I mean, in other words, there's one story after another in Sefer Bereshit that leads up to the point that basically, we have not behaved exactly the right way either. And basically, in other words, when the disaster comes upon us, it's not like it just comes out of nowhere. It doesn't come out of nowhere. We ourselves have contributed, like what's happening to, I hate, but since Carol did it, I'm going to do it too for 1 minute only, which is, look what's happening to us right now. We're making the discovery that all these people we thought were our allies are not our allies when the chips are down. Okay? In other words, you always have to think about that. I remember thinking about that when Corbyn went into power in Great Britain, thinking that that's going to happen here. It's just a matter of time before it happens here. And then sure enough, it happened here. In other words, Yosef obviously was, whatever you're going to call him, he was a chacham, and like I said, but he, I say, a zel chacham haroeh tanolad. And that means a person who's wise sees what the consequences of their actions will lead to. Okay?
Again.
Yosef, we got Rabbi Hopkins froze, but we didn't freeze. You guys can hear me, right?
Right. You were fine, but I didn't hear what you said.
And what I said was that Yosef
Yeah,
was
what
not a
you
chacham
said.
in the sense of etanola, because a wise person thinks about what they're doing might lead to in the future. Like I remember the times when I first, like in about 5-7 years ago, when Obama was president, this all started. All of a sudden, it became fashionable to zap Israel the way Obama was zapping Netanyahu. I mean, we were doing this ourselves, and we were proceeding to go ahead and join up in all this stuff. And, after all, Obama was really ours too. It wasn't just, he never would have gotten elected without Jewish support, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As a practical matter, though, he made it respectable to go ahead and say things about the state of Israel that nobody would have ever basically said before. We supported this. Was that smart on our part? No, it was not smart. In other words, you have to think about what you're doing is going to lead to. And this is what Joseph failed to do here. Of course, he's twice the age that he was when he was first became ruler in Egypt. People have to know when to let go. Rabbi Papke, you frozen again?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I don't think so. At least, I mean, I can hear you and you're not cutting in and out. So I appreciate that. So before I freeze again, I will say Shabbat Shalom. Everybody take care.
Thank you.
And thank you. Take
No.
care. Bye.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi Papke.